In July 1959, a partial meltdown occurred at the Rocketdyne Sodium Reactor Experiment (SRE) at the Santa Susana Field Lab in the mountains above the San Fernando and Simi valleys. The accident was caused by a blockage of sodium coolant in the reactor coolant channels, which split uranium atoms and melted the fuel and metal cladding. This released highly radioactive gases that included cesium and iodine. The Atomic Energy Commission, the AEC, and a nuclear contractor kept this accident secret for 20 years. Some say that this accident was a nuclear reactor meltdown and that the released radioisotope could have caused hundreds or even thousands of cancers in people who lived near the site, while others say that the data taken at the time showed that the releases were contained and controlled in accordance with regularity guidelines. Boeing says that the facility has since been decommissioned and cleaned up, and that there is no evidence that working conditions caused increased mortality in the Rocketdyne workforce. However, some researchers and former workers say that this incident has had long-term health effects on people who lived and worked near the site. And these long-term health effects included cancer, glioblastoma and bladder cancer. And Boeing say that they have been conducting an investigation into the environmental impacts of this site since 1984, and they are working to complete a clean-up that protects the health of the community whilst preserving the site's natural resources. In 2006, an independent panel of scientists and health experts found that this accident could have caused hundreds of cancers and that the chemical contamination from rocket engine testing could threaten the soil and groundwater. In 2007, a federally funded study found that people living within 2 miles of this facility had cancers of the blood and lymph tissue, bladder, thyroid and upper aerodigestive tract that were up to 60% higher than normal. And furthermore, investigators found that the Rocketdyne workers who were exposed to more external radiation, they had an increased risk of dying from all cancers. Workers who were monitored for internal radiation and received more than 30 MSV had an increased risk of dying from cancers of the blood and lymph systems and upper aerodigestive tract cancers. The Department of Toxic Substances tested the site within a 2-mile radius, and the panel's consultants estimated that, contrary to previous governmental reports, the partial meltdown could have released huge amounts of radioactive cesium and iodine, and they estimated that those radioactive releases produced 260 excess cancers. The sodium reactor experiment was meant to be a pioneering nuclear power plant designed to test the use of sodium as a coolant. In July 1959, a partial meltdown occurred when 13 of the reactor's 43 fuel elements partially melted. This led to the release of radioactive gases into the atmosphere. The meltdown was caused by a clogged coolant channel, which led to overheating of the fuel elements. The reactor was shut down and repaired, but the incident resulted in a significant radioactive contamination over the whole area. But this was during the Cold War era, and there was a strong emphasis on maintaining national security and public confidence in the nuclear program. The government thought that revealing the incident could have caused public panic and undermined trust in the nuclear industry. Perhaps officials feared that disclosing the meltdown would lead to widespread fear about radiation exposure and its potential health impacts. And if they had concerns about long-term health effects on nearby communities, they simply turned a blind eye to those concerns and downplayed them to avoid alarm. And in a gut-wrenching blow to residents, this incident was classified to avoid legal repercussions and to avoid potential lawsuits from affected residents. This secrecy helped to protect the reputation of the companies involved and the broader nuclear program. It wasn't until the late 1970s and the early 1980s that the full extent of this accident became public knowledge, and this led to increased scrutiny and demands for public transparency and accountability. The Rocketdyne sodium reactor meltdown remains a significant event in the history of the nuclear energy program. This highlighted the importance of safety, transparency and public trust. But what do you guys think about this incident? Comments below, and as always, Thank you for watching.